Hi everyone, and welcome along to the Breaking Barriers webinar brought to you by the PGMOL. As it is Black History Month, we are absolutely delighted to bring together this esteemed and fantastic panel to talk about their experiences officiating in the beautiful game. I'm Anne-Marie Batson, I'm a sports broadcaster, and I'll be your host this evening. Now, this webinar session offers a remarkable opportunity for the PGMOL to provide a platform for aspiring referees as yourselves to be sat on a call with top officials with an ability to ask and answer questions. Essentially, we're going to do a lot of listening, we're going to do some learning as well, and hear some personal stories about overcoming barriers. Now, before we get going with our conversation this evening, here's the General Manager of the PGMOL, Mike Riley, with a few words to welcome you all.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Breaking Barriers, an initiative that we at PGMOL are incredibly proud of. Breaking Barriers is about listening to the experience and advice from those who bring diversity to officiating at all levels of the game, and learning from what we have heard. It's about showing that refereeing really is for everyone. We want to see more diversity in every area of football and ensure that everyone has equal opportunity to get involved in refereeing. And thanks to the support of our Breaking Barriers panelists, we can hear at first hand how they have experienced refereeing so that we can understand their journeys and what it means for us. Today's edition is particularly important because we can also celebrate Black History Month. And we're focusing today's session on representation within the Black community. And I'd like to thank our panel of trailblazers, Aji, Joel, Joe and Phil, for giving up their time to join the panel. In Aji and Joel, we have two people who are passionately committed to both refereeing and to the advancement of Black referees within the game. And they should be incredibly proud of the work that they've been doing with the BME Referee Support Group and the work and progress that they've made over the last few years. In Phil and Joe, we have two people who have first-hand experience of officiating with. I know the calibre and quality of their work as referees, and I also know that they're going to tell some very interesting experiences of their journeys in the professional game. Their contribution as four panellists is a very important step in helping us in our drive towards greater equality, diversity and inclusion, and to ensure that refereeing really is reflective of all of our communities. Breaking Barriers is about sending a clear message to all those watching and listening that refereeing really is for everyone. And we want to encourage all those from underrepresented groups to get involved. And finally, a big thank you to Anne-Marie for leading the discussions today. We're looking forward to hearing and learning from all of our panellists, and under Anne-Marie's guidance, I know that it's going to be a fantastic show. So I hope everyone watching and listening really enjoys this session. Let's keep breaking barriers and let's keep moving forward. Thank you and enjoy this evening's show.
Thanks, Mike, for that really warm welcome. And it's always a pleasure to hear from you as well. Okay, let's get going. Time to introduce one of our panelists, Ajibola, who is the Vice Chair of the BAME Referee Support Group, FA Council member and National Games Communities Representative. How's it going, Aji? You well?
I'm very well, Anne-Marie. Good evening. I must confess how excited I am about this evening because it combines three of my life passions, if I may say. You know, passionate about inclusion and diversity and equal opportunities, passionate about football, as with many people listening tonight, and really passionate about refereeing. So really looking forward to the rest of this evening. How are you, Anne-Marie? You good?
I'm very well. I'm excited about this as well. Because I'm all about representation within the game, all around the game itself. So I'm honoured to be hosting this conversation this evening. So, Aji, for you, I mean, what was your relationship like with football as a young man growing up?
Before I sort of delve into that a little bit, Anne-Marie, I think it's also important whilst we all take this evening to enjoy what's on, to just I give kudos to you for hosting this evening, but also I'm very much aware of the work that goes into putting things like this together. So many thanks to the PGMOL, Mike, you just said speak, but also to your colleagues in the background and the production team in terms of the work they've done to make this happen for us all this evening. Good evening to everyone in the audience. As Marie said, my name is Ajibola, and I am a Step 2 referee in football at the moment. And I'm also extremely very proud, as you heard, to be the vice chair for the Black, Asians and Mixed Heritage Ethnicity Referee Support Group, predominantly really set up to voice for opportunity and support much needed by Black and brown officials up and down the country. As a result of the work we've been doing, I'm also very privileged to be part of the FA Council now, otherwise known as the Parliament of Football, representing my community as a National Games community representative, with now an extended responsibility as a referee ambassador for the referee committee of the FA Council. It's a lot to take in, I know, but it's really exciting for our community and a fantastic opportunity for our people in our community to have additional voices at the decision-making table to those that already exist. And as Mike alluded to, the uniqueness about this evening is being Black History Month, is that it gives us the opportunity to highlight and laud the contributions of Black people that have made significant contributions in representing our communities over the years, that have never been given the due praises that they deserved, really, or properly represented in history book. And refereeing is no different. So, whilst it's widely accepted in football and in football communities that football has an incredible power to bring people together and eradicate social barriers, and when it works, it's a wonderful sight and an indelible feeling. We've all seen it in major tournaments in the past when England have been involved, and I've had the privilege and pleasure of going to some of those tournaments, and you see the mixture of cultures and diversity. It's a wonderful experience. And as a Black referee now in the game in England, I'm extremely proud to be part of the football family. And we have the ability as Black people to bring something completely different to the table. And my biggest desire has always been and remains to be to see people that look like me and the members of the panel, to be involved in this area of the game and be given the opportunity to reach their potential. And hopefully we are on the right journey, because we know now that refereeing is a career, and it's a career in sport. In fact, some people might even say they're very well paid if you get into the professional game. And it's been well documented recently about the shortage of referees in the grassroots of football. And if you're involved in football at any level whatsoever, you know what frustrations it can cause when there isn't a referee in the game. So there is a real challenge for that area of the game in football at the moment, and it's been highlighted at FA level, council level, and board level within the game. So it's a significant area of focus for the future. And for us to really recover properly from this area, I think we need to really widen the talent pool by giving access to people from underrepresented communities. And that's one area that I certainly want to focus on alongside with my colleagues on the BME referee support group. As a young man, as you mentioned earlier, and Marie, growing up, in terms of my ambition, there was a stark reality about the non-visible Black and brown refereeing role models at the very highest level. The only image I had as a referee growing up was a white middle-aged man, and that was the reality. And even if you look at the game now, sadly, that continues to the next generation, because there's only currently one Black or brown referee on the national list at the moment in the top 4 divisions. And this year, the FA is celebrating 150 years of the most famous cup in the world, the FA Cup, which we all love watching. This weekend was an FA Cup weekend in the game, but yet, how many referees of colour have you ever seen referee the final of the game in 150 years? None, sadly. And most frustrating for us as black and brown officials, we look at the talent pool of referees coming through, and the FA's, really astute programs, and simply there isn't really enough talent in that pool for us to be satisfied about what the future looks like. So ultimately, in fact, if you look at the history of the game itself, and you've got 2 on your panel tonight, there's only ever been 8 Black or brown officials from our community to have reached that level of football. I think most people probably agree with me that in the society that we live in today, as diverse as it is, rich in culture, full of talent that we see playing the game every weekend, this is an unacceptable place to be in refereeing, and this has to change. And we all have a role to play. And as a group from the BME referee support group, we're extremely focused on doing everything within our power to work within the refereeing family with the administrators of the game and in this country to ensure that we improve the pathway for black and brown officials. It's ultimately, I think, and I mentioned we are going in the right direction because we are encouraged. The FA itself is on a journey, and you will have seen it well documented. You've seen pursuit of progress programs in the past. I'm sure you'll have seen the FA Leadership Diversity Code come out. These are all fantastic initiatives that are driving more inclusion and representation within the game of football. And we've seen this being championed at all levels. Even the England managers talked about it, about in management roles and leadership roles for people from our community. But sadly, we always feel, and we still feel, that the refereeing pathway somewhere always feels neglected, not taken along with the journey. And we just really want that to change. And we continue to work with some fantastic people in the game. You've heard Mike tonight, he's one of those, but also there are many within the FA, as well as our friends at Kick It Out, who are working with us to drive better recruitment initiatives, develop more ways to look after referees who are black and brown already in the game, to give more specific attention to their cultural needs and review the policies, some of those policies that unfortunately affects people that look like us negatively, promote more education around everyone and training to ensure that people are more aware of trailblazers that you'll be seeing tonight talking about it. So I'm very, very hopeful that the future could be a lot better than it is currently. Refereeing can be a fantastic career, really can be. It can give us access to places that we would not even think about going, teach us some wonderful life skills, some of which I've learnt myself, places that I didn't really even know existed in this country, let alone people that I didn't even know would ever be friends of mine and are friends of mine today, primarily due to refereeing. So there are some wonderful, wonderful experiences to be had. And I'm hopeful that the panel tonight will share that with you. So Anne-Marie, to answer your question, I think it's probably worthy of introducing some of those panels because I do believe they have a lot to offer in terms of promoting refereeing in our community, but also helping us challenge the status quo to make sure refereeing can be right for all.
Absolutely. So let's move swiftly on into introducing our panel for this afternoon. Let's say a warm welcome to Mr. Joel Mannix, who is the chair of the BAME Referee Support Group. How are you, Joel?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Anne-Marie?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good, thank you. Let's also introduce Phil Prosser to the panel. He is a former Football League referee. Welcome, Phil.
Good evening, everyone.
Good to see you, my friend. And last but never least, please show your warm appreciation to Mr. Joe Ross, who's also a former Football League referee. How's it going, Joe?
Very good, thank you. Nice to be in this lovely meeting today.
Good to have you all, gentlemen. Good to have you all. Joel, let me come to you first. So those who don't know you, can you just briefly give us a little bit of your background?
Me or Joe?
Joel, please. Mr.
Sorry,
Mannix.
Sorry, I thought you said Joe.
Joe.
It's a Joel and a Joe.
Yeah. So for me, I've been refereeing for 15 years. Took up the whistle in 2009 when Uriah Rennie said that was it for him. He said no more. So I decided that I would take up the refereeing pathway. Been exciting outside of the refereeing world. Some of you might know me as I work in the close protection industry as a bodyguard, and lately as a paramedic for looking after people with their illnesses. So yes, so that's me basically in a nutshell.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joel. Phil, what about you? So a little bird tells me that you are a referee in water polo. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I do water polo refereeing as well. I was in the RAF when I started my refereeing journey. And prior to refereeing, I played a lot of water polo, and I've gone back to that sport in recent months and involved in the Midland League with Worley water polo. So yeah, really enjoying it. But my background is I grew up in the West Midlands in Rowley Regis, and I got into refereeing because I was ordered to get into refereeing because I had a pretty poor disciplinary record as a player when I was stationed out in Germany. So that's how I got involved in refereeing in the first place. Never looked back. Within 4 years, I was in Wales. I was given an opportunity to be a FIFA assistant referee, came back to England, Was fortunate within 18 months was on the Football League, then onto the Premier League, and the rest, as they say, is history. So I've had a pretty good career in refereeing. I've met some wonderful people, and that's we undersell sometimes that there's some fantastic people in refereeing. I've met people all over the country, well, in fact, all over the world, who I'd like to call my friends today. And refereeing can be really good for you as a person, and also, as it's already been said, it gives you opportunities to travel to places you've never even heard of. So I would certainly encourage people to become referees, definitely.
How many red cards did you get, Phil?
A few. Being in the military, you had to pay your fine in front of your boss on the Monday morning. So you were marched in with your beret on, and you had to salute and then pay the fine. And it was getting quite embarrassing. So my warrant officer, who at the time was a referee, decided that probably a time for me to take up the whistle and learn where I'm going wrong. And as I say, never look back, and have thoroughly enjoyed 99.9% of everything that I've done in refereeing.
Brilliant. I love that story. It's a great story. Mr. Joe Ross, sir, hello. What did your friends and family say when you told them you were going to be a referee?
They were shocked at first because I always played. I played quite a good level. I had a little spell at non-league level. Then I played for a Sunday side in Tottenham. We won everything. We won the top sides called Nike in Tottenham. And we got quite a few trophies, football trophies. When I told them I was going to be a referee, they were quite surprised. And how that come about was one day I was injured, and I decided to ref Nike, my old club. So much stick, carried on. I quite enjoyed it. And there was a referee who was a Premiership referee on the other side, and he looked at me while I was reffing the game, and he said, "You should take it up. You look quite decent at it." He's still about now. Tony Ward, he looks after the referees at Arsenal Football Club. And he pushed me towards it. And then that's how it started. And I had a really good career, I must admit, with some obstacles in the way.
Obstacles in the way, which we will come on to shortly. Just to say, everybody, that everybody's watching, if you're watching obviously on YouTube, do share your comments on the page, and also give the PGMOL a follow as well. If you want to put out your questions on Twitter and on Instagram, their handle is @FA_PGMOL. Let's get into the optics then about refereeing. Let's talk about the black experience. Joel Mannix, I'll come to you first. Can you talk us through what it's like being a black referee, working in an environment where there's not many officials that look like you? How tall are you, by the way, Joel?
I'm 6'4".
There you go.
When I first took up the whistle, going through, obviously I played football. I was known on the pitch, put it like that, through just hefty tackles, as I would say, and my great goal scoring opportunities and goals that I scored. So I was known, joke. And when I decided, to become the referee, some people just thought to myself, wow, what is happening? It was kind of, I don't know. Was it game catcher? What game catcher is it? There's an old saying somewhere. Anyway, for me, some of the responses from clubs was negative. Moving up through the chain, the higher I went, the more negative reception I kind of got. But I just got on with it. I'm big enough, old enough, ugly enough to get on with it. And I just channeled out and just refereed a game of football. But there were challenges and there was problems. But it was just, sometimes you were very alone. You go into that changing room and you're just alone by yourself and you're with your thoughts, and you just have to kind of channel them positively and move on and referee the game and then leave. And that's it.
Phil, what were the challenges of the job for you?
The challenges, similar to Joel, really, being alone. I've had shaken hands with people at football grounds and they then wipe their hands on a towel. That's before the game, by the way, so it wasn't because my hands are sweaty, which was a little bit disconcerting. Comments from people. I've had a comment made about, your sort coming to games. And that was from quite a senior person in quite a senior club. But on the whole, positive. But when I think back to some of the negative things that happened to me as a referee, it was, what's this kid from the black country doing refereeing our game, you know, and who is this guy, you know, he's, and I was different, you know, and yeah, you've got to accept that you are different, and people, unfortunately, some people do treat you differently. I'd say on the whole, the majority of football, I only speak for myself, most of football are quite accommodating and quite accepting. But there is the odd one or two people who, I wouldn't say take offence to you being there, but certainly let you know that you're different when you're there. And it can be quite a lonely experience, because coming through the system, there was nobody to help you. There was nobody to bounce off to say, this has happened to me, what do I do? And I think that's one thing that I would like to see encouraged, is having somebody, for young black referees in particular, but black referees in general, somebody to share those experiences with, because guess what, guys? We've been through exactly the same.
Joe Ross, during the time when you were refereeing, were you having to deal with certain stereotypes of being a black referee? So, for example, that, you know, apparently black people don't like the cold, for example, that they can't run in the mud, and so on and so forth. And they're not intelligent as well, all those silly things. And I use that word loosely, of course. Were you having to deal with that as well?
Yeah, you had to do, because you're different. You was out there as a referee, but you was out there as a black referee, not as a referee. So people looked at you differently. So even going down to observers, the way they observed the game, they treated you differently. They found more faults in your game, I felt. And coming through the system, like I came through the system quite quickly. So from the parks, I got onto non-league within 3 seasons. And then when I got onto non-league, I felt I was held back because who I was. Turn up to meetings, I was the only person in the room. People look at you as you walked in. You go into grounds, they show you the away dressing room rather than the referee's changing room, because they don't expect you to be a referee turning up at the door. So there's all these challenges you got to deal with as well reffing the game. And as young referees coming through, people like us could guide them to overcome these things. And I think that's the way forward.
We can certainly talk about mentors in a little while towards the end of our conversation. Joel Mannix, I want to come back to you actually about reasons that you felt that you were held back from progressing in the game.
Where do you start? Someone might listen, as I've always said, if someone is of a diverse background, let's just say, whether they be lesbian, gay, whatever, you know, LGBT, part of that, you know, the diversity group, people don't know what they are or whoever they are, how they identify themselves, until they come out and openly say, when I turn up at the gate with my kit, I'm a black man. Yes, I'm a tall black man. Yes, I'm a very big black man, but it's obvious there. Now, you can't look at someone and you can't say, oh, well, I don't like him. Now, some of us, you know, on the panel, I'm sure we have an art, and that art is if we are well reciprocated or not. Some clubs, you are very well, and some clubs you're not. And I mean, on the pitch, you get the odd comments. You get that through players. You go into the boardroom, and you know, as my colleague said, you know, people shake your hand and then wipe their trousers. That's happened endless. You come to the ground and people say the away changing room there, or are you the coach driver? Mate, do I look like a coach driver in the FA badge, shirt and tie? Let's, you know, oh, sorry. And that, you know, oh, where's the referee's changing room? Oh, the referee's here and he's black. And it's like, well, yeah, you cannot spot the obvious. But these are the things which come, but you just smile and you just get on. You've got a job to do. So when it comes to obstacles, there are many. There are so many obstacles which come. And the first one is people see the color of your skin first before you even say hello, or even before you say anything.
Aji, in terms of just picking up what Joel Mannix said about encountering those challenges, when you were facing those issues, how did you deal with them?
It's a great question, Anne-Marie, and I think we've got to understand this, that refereeing is a reflection of the society we live in today. You know, the challenges in our society, which again we mentioned we've all seen and really brought to the fore with the tragic issues that happened in the States only last year with George Floyd. And now, you know, post the Euro session, everyone's now all of a sudden realizing that it's not just in the US, that we've got major issues in England as well. But when you think about the role of a referee as a team leader, as a decision maker, quite often, you know, whether you're white, black, or orange, when you make a popular decision, people don't like it anyway because it's not for them. You are now at that added layer of skin color, which, you know, the unconscious biases and challenges in people's personalities and paradigms come to the fore. I think you can just start to imagine what kind of lifestyle and challenges people of color face in refereeing. And as Phil mentioned, I think the challenge I've been, and I've been in the game similar to the other guys 20 odd years, the challenges that the game have faced, especially the young ones coming through, there's never been a true support network, a safe space for referees of color to be able to identify with, but also be able to voice these unique challenges that we face, as Joe alluded to. As soon as you walk in, or in my case, as soon as you send that email to say, I have been appointed a referee, Ajibola, those alerts go up straight away. Those defense mechanisms go up straight away. So you're already starting to form those challenges, those barriers already the way before you even turn up to a game of football, just primarily based on the name and the understanding of it. So, you know, I emphasize the challenges we face. It's no different to what's in society, but as referees are often known as SWAT, you know, we see the abuse across the game to referees at all levels, really, which is unacceptable. Again, just add the added layer of color into it, and you can start to imagine what that really is like for referees of color in the game today.
Phil, do you think that there has been progress in the game in terms of equality, diversity, and inclusion?
Definitely. You know, you see referee courses for females, for example. The women's game is flourishing because of it, you know, and that should be applauded. The FA have done a magnificent job in encouraging females to become referees, and the support network they've got and the role models they've got to look up to. You know, Sean Massive is just one example. But I think back to my day, you know, when you had people like Wendy Toms, all these people are role models that people can aspire to be because they can see them. I think the problem for black referees is, where's your role models? There's nobody on, there's one referee on the national list. You know, I don't see courses specifically designed for black referees. And I think that would go a long way to making the pool of referees to choose from, you know, bigger. You know, if we were to go out there into the communities and promote refereeing as a fantastic opportunity for you to travel, keep fit, you know, all the virtues that we all know that surround refereeing, I think that would be an amazing initiative. You know, I see people out in the communities all the time. I work in the communities, encouraging education about the history of the West Indies within the military, for example. But what I don't see black referees or referees full stop in the community saying to young kids especially, have you ever thought about refereeing? And I think if you want to get that talent pool bigger and therefore more opportunity for somebody to make it to the top, you've got to increase the talent pool. And the only way to do that is put boots on the ground, go out in the community and say, by the way, look at this guy, look at what he's done, or look at the virtues of being a referee. The life skills alone that it can teach you must be a positive, must be. And I have myself tried to encourage black-only referee courses. Unfortunately, it didn't quite get off the ground, even though I had sponsorship for kit to pay for the courses. And that's something the FA might want to look at, is the cost of the course. Because some of the communities I go into, especially around Birmingham, these kids haven't got a lot of money. And I think the fee could put people off. You know, that's just one barrier straight away, is the fee. You know, but I managed to get sponsorship to pay those fees, and yet we still couldn't get that initiative off the ground. But I was a one-man band trying to go around the communities and encourage people to become referees. But if we're going to do that, we need some impetus behind it to encourage that, like we have done in the women's game, like we're doing in the disability game now. Let's get out there, get boots on the ground, talk to these young people, talk to the parents, talk to the communities and say, do you know what? You could be a referee and look at where you could be.
Well said, Phil. Joel Mannix, you wanted to come in.
I've always got a quote, and as you can be present, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And if you put on the telly over this weekend, how many referees of colour are you going to see? Let's be honest. How many officials are you going to see? So it's how are you going to attract? And it's not a rhetorical question. It's like how are you going to attract people from BAME, from Black, from Asian, from mixed? How are you going to? If you can't see it, you can't be it. So people, they don't identify themselves. You go up and down a football pitch, you'll see children playing football, Ronaldo on their back. You know, who else is there? There's Mbappe. There's so many players out there. And these children have got their names on their back because they've identified themselves as that, black, white, however. But as a referee, how many black referees can you identify with if there isn't none out there? And it's hard. You go to let's say the FA, you say, let's introduce this. And they are trying. I'm not saying they're not. They are trying now. And, you know, it's kind of educating those that need to be educated because they don't know. And they just think, oh, yeah, we'll throw our hat out to a pool and we'll think, yeah, this is going to be happening and we can get. But you can't because people will identify with who they belong to. It's just how society is. And that's it. And so there is a small minority. Why? Because we're not known. 2 seasons ago, name me how many. Even if you go into the Premiership, is there a black or Asian or referee? No. On the line, there's a Kill. We come down, there's Sam. We come further down and we've got Sonny and his brother. That's 4. Okay. How many more? If you can't see it, you just can't be it. Sorry. That's always been the message.
Aji, you wanted to come in as well.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I mean, Phil makes a valid point, and so Joe is beautiful now. But I think it's sort of worthy of taking a pause just to recognise that English referee is known as some of the best referees in the world, and that's predominantly because they've got a fantastic training capability within the FA for training their referees, and that's known. I mean, we've had a history of referees refereeing major tournament finals. But then when you look and you dig a little bit deeper, you look at the sort of training platform, the mechanism for developing this referee, the center of excellence of refereeing, it's known in this country, and you start to dig deeper, and you look at all various levels of referees, it jumps out straight at you. And you look at the talent pool, you think, well, where are all the black and brown officials? There aren't any. There aren't any. A handful for the future. But then when you go into the Arkney marshes of this country in London, or you go to Liverpool moors, or you go to the Midlands in Birmingham, and you look at the parks on a Sunday morning, you see all these black and brown officials doing their stuff with talent. So you start to ask the question, it's not just about recruitment, it's about retention within the game and about opening up the opportunities to ensure this, if you like, raw referees, as it's known in the game, are given the opportunity in those talent pools to develop. I mean, Joe and myself have been beneficiary of excellent support and training because we are at the level that we are, where it's mandatory to have those sort of support in place. And that is to be coming there because I see the difference having been in the game of having the coaching, the support, the mental health element of it, of being able to talk to somebody after a game, before a game, to really put game plans together, which goes a mile in your preparation. So it's not just about the recruitment piece, which is extremely important. But why aren't we looking at what we've got at the moment and wrapping blankets around those potential talent that become evangelism for refereeing and being able to show that black and brown people have the capability to do exactly what our peers are doing from all other races. So there are the elements of cronyism that exist in the game needs to be addressed alongside the recruitment strategy as well.
Well said. Mr. Prosser, you wanted to come in as well.
I'm muted. Oh, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate the point about the recruiting. We can retain as many referees as we can, but if we've got a big pool of referees, then it's going to be easier to retain because recruitment for me is key here. We're not out in the communities talking to people, encouraging them to become referees. Once we've got them, then we need to put the retention in. I completely agree with the comment that was made about retention and training. But if you haven't got people in the pool in the first place, and you haven't got people to aspire to, and you haven't got those people who've been there and done it, retention, I'm afraid, I don't think it's going to work. But we do need initially the numbers to come through, because I think at the end of the day, we're going to have to justify our inclusion in retaining referees. And the only way we can do that is by numbers. If we've got big numbers, we can justify it. There's no way they can say no to us.
Which actually is a nice segue into my next point about going to that next stage about mentorship, because I know both Joe and Phil, you're former Football League referees. So you've got all this knowledge in your minds probably still. I mean, I know the rules at IFAB keep changing the rules about handball and offside, but we can discuss that another day. However, the point being is that you guys still have all this knowledge and experience that you could share with the wider group. So let me come to you, Mr. Ross, about that, about mentorship, and then picking up what Phil said about that he tried to start something, tried to start a program, and unfortunately didn't get off the ground. Do we need to revisit that again and create some sort of national program to show that there is a pathway into this, and it can be a profession, highly regarded as well, but encouraging people right across the spectrum to get involved?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, because I've done a bit over the Arsenal Academy with the young referees, and what's happening now is they get to level 4 and then they get forgotten. So they get to that stage where they can't get to the next step up. So it's a holdback. So people like us should be going in and speaking to them, or speaking to the FA and say, why are these young guys getting held back? So we need a platform for that, I personally think. And also what I was thinking as the guys were talking just now, we've had Football League referees on the list, apart from Uriah, but people like Phil, Trevor Parks, myself, but they're not promoted as Black History Month. Why are we not in the limelight to say these guys have made it, and the younger referees could see that? And that's not happening on the scene at the moment.
Just to pick up your point, actually, Joe Ross, about the levels. I'm wondering who can pick this up, because just for those who are watching who may not necessarily understand how the levels work, maybe Aji, you can help me with this one. What are the levels? So if somebody wanted to officiate in the Premier League, how long would it take for them to get to that elite level? Briefly, if you could.
Yeah, indeed. I think the referee pyramid keeps changing and not straight on a daily basis, primarily to address shortage. But currently, in terms of the Premier League level, is known at the highest level of the game, which is step 1. Below that is step 1 football, effectively, which is the national list. So you've got Premier League, then you've got national list. From a black and brown official perspective, there is none on the Premier League or Championship. The only one which I alluded to earlier, Sam, operates on national list level. And then you've got step 1, step 2, and then you get down into the grassroots of football, which is step 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, all the way to 11. And then thereafter, you've got trainees who then come into the game as far as the adult pathway is concerned. There are completely different rules for women's football, and there is different rules for youth football. So I won't muddy the waters. But we're talking about predominantly the men's game that is in this sort of instance. So you're talking about 7 levels. Now, in terms of time it takes, is depending on your ability, but it could be anything up to 10 years and onwards, which again, it's another issue. So when we're talking about recruitment, which Phil speaks to earlier, the challenge is actually accelerating that process from when you qualify as a referee all the way to the top, which is why it's important that you look at what you've currently got to make sure that you've got those role models that Joe was talking about, to keep people thirsty, hungry, but also more importantly, to believe that there are opportunities for them in the game, whilst you address the challenges around how long it takes from qualifying on day 1 all the way to the top of the game, which could be anything from 10, 20, in some cases, beyond 20 years of time. But we've also seen it done a lot shorter by other peers, not necessarily black and brown officials. Could be done as quickly as 8 years, bang, 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 and accelerated. So I am aware of discussions with the FA through our various platforms of fast tracking that process, because in today's modern society, it shouldn't take that long if you've got a talent, especially as Phil alluded to. If you're coming out the game, you already got the knowledge of football, or you're getting let go in academies like Joe was talking about. Why then do you need to invest 10 years just to be a referee in a game that you already know at a certain level? So there are discussions in place, but currently as it sits, Anne-Marie, it could take anything up to 10 years just to get through that system.
Thanks, Aji. Really appreciate that. Joel, Mannix, I want to pick up something that you said, and somebody's actually put a message in the comments about it. I'm going to read it from Philip Shirley. He said, following from Joel's point, if you can't see it, you can't be it. What happened to ensure women are now seen at high level refereeing, running the line in the professional men's game? Joel.
Exactly. It goes through everything I've reiterated and said. I know that the FA now, since the women's game has come on leaps and bounds, that there is, Sky invested a load of money in the games, and you've got women refereeing those games. England played Andorra. That was, one of the first where the whole full team was women. I can't, I know there's some female referees out there and they're very good, but they're just not getting their break. And, I can't answer. I would love to answer that question, but I don't know. I really don't know. But I know, you've got Sian, and she's there, and week in, week out, she does a great job. And I've spoken to some of her colleagues, and they've said one of the best female linos out there. She's that good. But after Sian, who else is there? What else is the PGMOL, the FA doing? I know that they're bringing in this, the women's game, and it's moving on this season. But apart from that, it was unheard of. But hey, I can't, I don't know what else I can say.
It's a tough one to answer, and I appreciate I slightly put you on the spotlight, but I agree it's a very complex one. And then the next level to that, I guess, is about having black females within the women's game and the men's game as well. And maybe that's a discussion for another day in terms of what we discuss about today. There's a question I just want to ask about lacks of appreciation towards being a match official, because that must be another layer. Joel Mannix talked to her about the layers, about being first you're a referee and then you're seen as a black referee, and then there's being underappreciated as a match official as well. Phil, how do we go about changing that?
Well, you are underappreciated. It's the only profession in the world where you have to be perfect on day one and get better. It's all about perception for me and communication. I always thought I was a good communicator, especially with clubs and with players, and always try to sell what I was trying to do. And I think I see a lot of young referees coming through the system. When I say young referees, I don't mean young in age. I mean young in experience of refereeing, coming through the system, trying to do things that they see perhaps on Match of the Day or on Sky Sports on a weekend, and it blowing up in their face, and them not, because they don't quite understand how to put that particular art into the game. And I think where we struggle, and I do see it with the level that I observe at level 4, is they've got people giving them inputs from all over the place, not just one person they're bouncing off. So somebody's telling them to do this, somebody's telling them to do something else, and they get confused on match days, and therefore you get this perception that the referees aren't very good. And I just think, as if you're a referee coming through the system, just go out there and do your job, do your homework, be professional, explain your decisions, talk to people. For me, the big key is talking to people. If you want to break down barriers, if you want to educate people, the only way you can do that is by talking to them. And that's no difference with refereeing. You've got to talk to people and tell them what you're doing, why you're doing it. And for me, I still think we need a BAME representation for black referees who have particular challenges in the game, because they are different to the women, to the white males, because they're not going to be called the N-word, are they? And I have been called the N-word in a game. Where do I go to talk about that? That's the sort of thing we need for BAME referees. But for all referees, you're going to turn up to a game, you've got to look professional. There's a perception. Some of these people you're dealing with have been in the game a very long time. I'm dressed tonight like I would attend a match, yeah, because that's the perception. If you turn up in a tracksuit, they might think you're an away player or the kit man. It's all about being professional, isn't it? It's all about the perception. It's all about communicating with people. So for me, we need to have a look at ourselves first of all and go, hang on a minute, are we doing everything we can to give our best performance? So therefore the negative criticisms will diminish. I don't think you're ever going to eradicate it, to be honest, because you will make mistakes because you're a human being. That's just a fact of life. But I think if you can explain your mistakes and you're willing to stand up and explain what you've done, why you've done it, and also accept sometimes that it doesn't matter what you say, some people just don't like referees. And it's not you, it's because you wear black. That's as simple as it is.
Well said, Phil. Aji, you just wanted to come in briefly.
And I've got to say, first of all, Phil, I'm just delighted that the FA have taken in a more relaxed view to match day dress codes, because now we do turn up in gaming tracksuits, which is quite refreshing for me personally, because it is, refereeing is a sport. And talking about what Phil was just been on what Phil was saying, refereeing is a sport, and it is a competitive sport. And young referees coming into the game need to be aware that actually you are in a competitive scenario. You need to play to win, which means you need to bring your best game, your A game, to the table all of the time. You need to train right. You need to eat right. You need to approach right. You can enhance your communication skills. All those key skills that Phil alluded to in his little piece there are all relevant, because it is actually now a career, and it's not just sort of running around. You want to get to the top. You need to treat it as such. You need to bring your A game every time, every week, which means you do your homework, you do your studies, you do your homework about the clubs, which is always an interesting discussion point for me, because often enough you hear managers, and you've heard Neil Warnock say quite a lot of times, say referees haven't got a clue about the game. Well, I would beg to differ significantly, because as a referee, you're not only a fan of the sport, you watch the game like any other fan, but also you've got the added dimension of studying the laws of the game, the technical elements of the game. And before match day, you do your homework about the clubs, play pattern, problem players, you know where you're going. And then you've got to enhance your communication of dealing with multiple types of player, personalities on the day, managers with different grievances and how they see the game. And then after the game, you've got access to the boardroom, those that think about the finance. You've got access to the groundsmen who think about day-to-day simple stuff. So your all-round view of the game is second to none. So how can you possibly say refereeing, it doesn't really matter? It's an important facet of the game. But talking about the point was made earlier about women in the game, and I just want to speak to that very, very quickly. I think it's important that actually we as a community, we've got a role to play in football, and we've got to be prepared to stand up and be counted, which is why people like Phil, people like Joe are very, very important from bringing that sort of knowledge base into it. But people like ourselves today that are still in the game, and I call upon all my colleagues and peers of referee, it's time for us, which is why we set up the BME Ref Support Group, which a few alluded to we didn't have in these days. We have that now. We have a community. We have members like yourselves that are part of the group that want to contribute, want to learn, but also want to show that people from our community are capable at delivering at all levels of the game and bringing ourselves, but more importantly, be comfortable in our skin of who we are as Black people, to be able to get out there on a Saturday, on a Sunday, on a Tuesday night, rain, mud, sunshine, whatever it is, and deliver a game of football safely as the team leader, walking away with our head held high, no matter what the challenges are. That's really what we ought to aspire to be ourselves in our community, because we're capable. And I sincerely believe that.
Thanks, Aji. And a shout out as well to JJ. She's one of the few Black female referees that I know of, and hopefully over the next few years or so, we'll have more coming through into the game. And I should say, gents, we've had a ton of questions and comments coming through. So I'm going to move on to that now, because I want to try and get those questions answered as many as possible. If you keep your answers quite brief as well, that would be really, really brilliant. Starting off with Carl Dixon. A question for you, Joe Ross. He says, any advice to newly qualified referees from a BAME background starting their refereeing journey in grassroots football?
Yeah, my advice for them is to be, when you turn up at the game, be confident. As you said before, talk to the players, and just be yourself. And any questions or anything, just look to speak to people. Anything's feedback from the game or anything, just speak to people.
Brilliant. Phil, a question for you from Gahim Mazel. The question is, what's a skill set that you've kept and improved from the lower levels of football to the top?
Being professional. Refereeing an REF interstation game on a Wednesday. I was very lucky. I did games in Europe and Champions League, that sort of stuff. Just be professional. Prepare for every game, because the players deserve your A game every time you turn up. And it doesn't matter whether it's on the local park, whether it's Wembley. They deserve your A game, so treat it accordingly. And I did that throughout my whole career. Train for the position you're going to do. So if you're running the line, train to run the line. Don't train to referee, and vice versa.
I like that. I like that, Phil. Mr. Mannix, question for you from Sebastian Fraser. As a black official, I often feel that abuse / prejudice from spectators is heightened in some aspects. How did you combat abuse, remain focused when passing through the ranks?
It's the old saying, water off a duck's back. You hear it, goes through one ear, comes out the other. Because if you take it on, everything starts to drop. I know it's very hard, but it's just one of those things that you just have to hear it and it goes through and you just get on with it.
Aji, I've got a comment actually that I'm going to put to you. Maybe you can help me understand this one. It's from Minesh Gupta. He says, bring back full-time RDOs across the country and implement regional BAME RDOs too. What's an RDO? Can you give some context to that, please?
Yes, indeed. I think one thing to understand, Anne-Marie, is that the refereeing setup are led by counties. So whilst the FA sits and sets the governance at the very high level, each county is operating as an independent businesses, and there are 50 of those. And within those independent businesses, they have referee development officers, whom again, whilst the FA may develop this strategy as to what they need to do, it's down to the independent businesses to then decide how they want to manage their resources and what they prioritize themselves, which includes refereeing. So the RDO simply means the referee development officers within each county. Now, due to the challenges that we've all faced in this country over the last 18 months or so, some counties have made the decision, which is quite frustrating from a referee perspective, that the resource that they want to do away with are the referee development officers. Now, those in itself is a challenge, let alone actually those development officers themselves being tasked with developing referees from our communities. So if you haven't got one in the first instance, refereeing suffers. But then if you haven't got one with the right knowledge based on understanding of what needs to be done, then refereeing from our community suffers even more. Now, Minesh Gupta, I know very well, and he does an excellent job in the Midlands, or off his own back, really, predominantly trying to develop referees, but recruit referees across that part of the country. And there is a clear role within refereeing for that to happen. We're talking about shortage of refereeing. Well, how are you going to get more referees into the game if you haven't got those local reach points to go out into the communities, like Phil was alluding to actually recruit those people that they can relate to? So it's a double-edged sword, and we really need the FA to come to the table and support that conversation to make sure that we get the structure right, but more importantly, we get that level of input into those communities via the county referee development officers.
Thanks, Aji. Joel Mannix, did you want to come back in briefly?
Yes, I'm a Hearts official. He'll most probably punch me for saying this, but one of my best mentors was a gentleman which Phil and Joe might have worked with, is Phil Sharp. Phil was my RDO. He was a great mentor. Questions I didn't ask, I came to. He had answers from all level. Those that don't know, Phil was one of the best linesmen that I think the FA has ever produced, and the PGMOL. He did the World Cup final, etc. Worked the Olympics all the way down. So for me to have that person to go and speak to as my RDO and speak to him outside of any refereeing decision, it just helped me, and I know it helped most of the Hearts referee to have that amount of information and that person with that ability. That position has now been made redundant, and I know Phil is out there waiting, but it's one of those where BAME ref support was where it kind of came in. That cue was, there are black referees out there, we don't know them all, they are going through different struggles, and this is what BAME ref support was about, and it is about. So if those referees that are out there, you can come to us, you can hit us, you can ask us these questions, so you do have that mentoring and that support as a BAME referee that's been through that struggle and is kind of going through, and you listen to the abuse, you hear this, what you do, what you say. Sometimes when you go to another RDO who is white, or they might not have that same understanding, but from someone that BAME, they can. So this is why one of the fundamental skills of the BAME ref support group was because we can help others. There is another support network out there So if you do need it, or you do need help, you do need questions, you know, the panel is there. There's you know, myself, there's Aji, there's Val, there's Minesh, there's Phil, there's Ian, and the list goes on, you know. And if we don't know, we'll go and we'll find the support so we can help you, so that we can break these barriers and you can become better officials.
Thanks for that, Joe. Phil, I've got a quick question from you from Howard Roberts, and I think it's a really important one. Why should my teenage son continue to referee in the face of constant abuse?
I think that's a really good question. And for me, it's about support. We need to wrap this young teenage referee in a blanket and support this referee, because the sound from the question, it suggests to me that this referee is not being supported. He's got nobody to bounce off. He's got nobody to talk to. He's got nobody to say, this is what happened in the game. Did I do this right? Did I do this wrong? Nobody turning up to his games to offer him that support. So for me, it's about wrapping people in blankets and providing that level of support to say, look, you're doing good. Let's try this next time when you deal with it, and giving them some tips and ideas on what happened to us. You know, we've all come through the system. We've all been subjected to that abuse on a Sunday morning from supporters and moms and dads. So we've all felt that. And for me, it's all about having a support network and a mentorship network where these young referees can be looked after. We can go out and support them on the games that actually when they're refereeing, and we can give them advice and support and actually challenge people who are challenging them at the same time.
Joe, is there anything you want? Joe Mannix, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, and you know, that's what BameRev support's there for. It's there. We will support. You know, hit us up. We're on Twitter. We're on the website. You know, we're approachable. This is what we're there for. We're there. So, you know, Howard's son doesn't have to go through this. And if he does, Aji, myself, you know, anyone, we'll come down and we'll support. We'll come and watch you. And I stick to my word. Wherever you are, as long as you're not on the moon somewhere, I will come and I will support you as best as I can. Just tell me where, when, and I will turn up. And I'm a man of my word.
Actually, Howard has just written a comment, which I'm going to read to you all. It says, I'm part of the representation team of the Referees Association. Makes me both sad and angry, if not surprised, to hear your experiences. Thank you for being so selfless as to share with us all. And that's probably the theme that's been running through the comments actually over the last few minutes or so, gents. Another one here from Ren1. He says, respect to Joel Mannix, Phil Prosser, Joe Ross and Ajibola. Great to see events and hear discussions like this taking place as well. And one more from Chris Paros, who says, hi everyone, Hackney Corning, big up Hackney. Great to be here and wonderful to hear from Aji as well. It's been a great discussion, gents, and I'd love to keep it going, but that's all we've got time for, I'm afraid to say. I'd love to chat more because there's so many more questions I want to ask you, but maybe we can revisit this, I think, and I think we should revisit this in the near distant future and keep this conversation going. I'm very keen to keep this conversation going as well. I would like to say a massive thank you to Aji, Joel, Phil and Joe for their excellent advice and contributions. Thanks to Mike Riley as well from the PGMOL as well. And thank you for everyone for sending your comments, your questions and your suggestions as well. It's been really, really good to hear from you all. I've learned so much from this session, and what's made it even more special for me and hopefully for everybody watching, as well as for our panel as well, the importance of having this discussion in Black History Month. But let's remember that we shouldn't just focus on October. We should be having these conversations every single month of the year as well. And it's been great to have a panel with Black referees. It's something we've not done before, and I'm hoping we're going to do more of in the future. Speaking of which, Breaking Barriers returns in November, and we'll have another awesome session for everybody planned. So keep your eye on the socials for that one. Keep an eye out from the clips from today's conversation as well on social media. You can follow PGMOL on Twitter and Instagram. Just search for @FA_PGMOL. And please do amplify the messages of advice, the suggestions, thoughts and comments that you've heard from today. Thanks again, and let's continue to celebrate and amplify representation right across the game. I've been your host, Anne-Marie Batson. Thanks for watching and take care.